whole point of sustainable development is that we achieve progress in 3 areas: a just society, a healthy environment, and a productive economy. The art of sustainable development need not be overcomplicated. If we adopt a longer-term approach and consider the 3 elements together from the start, we open up the possibilities for simpler solutions. This will make us better policymakers and improve our delivery and operations as we find new, exciting and unexpected solutions to the challenges we face.
Who leads the environment movement? The convener of the summit, Maurice Strong, identifies Baron Edmund de Rothschild as the creator of the environment movement. Here are his own words describing Rothschild as the positive synthesis of environment on the one hand and growth and development on the other. Listen carefully as Maurice Strong introduces Baron de Rothschild.
So there is no better person. He epitomizes in his own life that positive synthesis between environment, conservation on the one hand and economics on the other. And I'm just delighted to have this opportunity of introducing to you Edmund de Rothschild.
The positive synthesis of environment on the one hand, that's the thesis, and growth and development on the other, that's the antithesis. He very clearly admits that the Rothschild combination, including the Rockefellers and most world capitalists, aim to control the environment and development movement as the synthesis. Power will converge into their hands through the Rio Conference. The synthesis, the head of the power, merges into the House of Rothschild.
Dealing with environmental problems isn't a matter of just pumping a little extra money in here and there. It's a matter of changing our priorities, changing the way in which we make our decisions. As the business leaders at Rio said, changing course, changing the way our industrial civilization sets its priorities. Now, why aren't we doing that? In my view, there's a deep moral and ethical dimension here. That people respond to their self-interest, yes, but they also respond to their deepest moral, ethical, and spiritual values. And that's why at Rio I presented a proposal to world leaders that they adopt a kind of Magna Carta for the Earth, an Earth Charter.
Agenda 21?
Yeah, no, well, that was the practical agenda for implementing it. No, I proposed that they adopt an Earth Charter, a statement of moral and ethical principles to guide the conduct of people and nations towards the Earth and towards each other. They weren't ready for it at that point. We went part way in that direction. So Mikhail Gorbachev and I joined together and brought a lot of other people together. Stephen Rockefeller, just one of the guiding lights in this and in the drafting process of producing a People's Earth Charter. And now millions of people around the world have signed on to this.
The fourth world. No one really talks about the fourth world, do they? That's because we haven't seen the fourth world come about. The fourth world came up in the title of the Congress I attended. It was called the Fourth World Wilderness Congress. Maurice Strong said it was called the Fourth World because it was the fourth one of these environment congresses that Edmund de Rothschild had created. I learned later that the world order refers to the coming one world government as the Fourth World.
It came out really from a Rockefeller-funded organization and a Rockefeller-funded man who's a top man at the United Nations, Maurice Strong, who started up the Rio Earth Summit, where every insect and animal and tree and blade of grass was given special rights, but what wasn't given any rights at all were humans. Because this is the century for change, and what it's talking about, of course, is this totalitarian world regime. And when you go as far back as the United Nations and then the League of Nations, the precursor, they set up a department for agriculture, for instance. In fact, they set up a department for everything that you need personally to live, to sustain your own life. Because the world they said they bring in is one where the common people could not rule and guide their own lives. It would be done by experts. And all private property, eventually, and all foodstuffs and all water would be given over to these private organizations that are really, it's what Carol Quigley was talking about in Tragedy and Hope, a new feudal-type system. These big organizations to do with food and all energy and resources are all part of one military-industrial complex.
Sustainable development has become the popularized expression for Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is the 1992 United Nations Rio Declaration on the Environment and Development.
It is the agenda for the 21st century you're living in today. For a brave new world where everything that you cherished and held true will no longer exist.
Agenda 21 defines itself as the comprehensive plan of action to be taken globally, nationally, and locally by organizations of the United Nations.
Sustainable development is the philosophy designed to bring human beings across the globe under the full control of a narrow human elite.
It's a 40-chapter document to basically control the world. It's based entirely on socialist control mechanisms.
Sustainable developers have designed a global movement coordinated through a global to local action plan to create world government in accordance with certain objectives.
I want to tell you about a few of the things that I have learned during these last 5 years of intensive research. Perhaps the most startling thing that I can share with you is that all of the conspiracy theories that you've ever heard about one world government, about the UN takeover of the world, all of those conspiracies have now been laid to rest. There's nothing conspiratorial about it. It's all published. The UN-funded Commission on Global Governance began meeting in 1992 in earnest and met for 4 years, and last fall released their final report. It is entitled Our Global Neighborhood.
The World Trade Organization was created in 1995 by the same institutions, the same powerful central banks that created the United Nations and empowered it in the late 1940s. They seek to destroy national sovereignty, not just in America, but worldwide, and rein it in under the control of a huge dictatorial machine. And their track record is clear. They are nothing more than servants of the corrupt global establishment, serving their every whim, dividing up the property on the global plantation.
This is a map of the Wildlands Project. To explain the map, the red are areas that are to be off limits to human beings. No resource development, no human activity. If you live there, you won't. The yellow areas are the areas for major control of all human activity. If you live there, you won't. The black areas, the black dots, are the smart growth zones. That's where human beings are to be stacked and packed in small living units along rail tracks. The smart growth program ultimately has jobs assigned and children cared for by the state.
The document calls for literally reducing the human population by as much as 2/3 to 3/4 in the next 30 to 50 years. It could set aside up to 1/2 of the American landscape into wilderness areas interconnected by wilderness corridors, all surrounded by human buffer zones in which human activities are highly regulated. That is very, very clear in these United Nations documents that they want to set up a regulatory structure that would affect every man, woman, and child on planet Earth, and all of the control would be headquartered in the United Nations. And if we take the more recent United Nations documents, it's going to be called the Trusteeship Council in the restructure of the United Nations that's occurring right now.